The envelope felt heavier than paper should. I stood in my office at Apex Defense Systems, watching the late afternoon sun cut through the Alexandria skyline, and felt my grip tighten around the certified mail that had just been delivered. My assistant had signed for it 20 minutes ago. I'd been in a video call with Pentagon procurement officers, finalizing delivery schedules for our $189 million contract, the biggest win of my career. The return address read, Moretti and Associates Legal Counsel. My maiden name. The family name I'd stopped using 8 years ago. I tore it open. The words, Emergency Petition for Involuntary Bankruptcy, swam across the page. Below it were the names. Petitioner, Vincent Moretti. Respondent, Apex Defense Systems. Alleged debt, $2 million. My vision tunneled. The document slipped slightly in my suddenly numb fingers, and I had to consciously grip harder to keep from dropping it. Vincent, my brother. The brother who'd spent 8 years mocking my little hobby, who'd never invested a single dollar in my company, who'd never even asked how the business was doing beyond sneering at family dinners I'd stopped attending 5 years ago. $2 million, a debt that didn't exist, a filing that could freeze my assets, terrify my investors, and jeopardize the defense contract that would transform Apex from startup to industry leader. Through my office window, I could see my team working, 47 people whose livelihoods depended on this company I'd built from nothing. The phone on my desk showed 6 missed calls from our DoD contract manager. They'd need reassurance, fast. Later, I would learn that my mother's cousin, who worked at one of our compliance law firms, had mentioned the DoD contract at a family gathering. Vincent had immediately seen it not as my success, but as an opportunity to finally put me in my place. My name is Gabriella, I'm 35, and I'm the founder and CEO of a defense technology company. This is the story of how I made my family finally see me. The thing about being dismissed your entire life is you learn to document everything. When your own family bets against you, you develop habits that look like paranoia until the moment they save you. I'd left the Moretti family business empire at 24 with a Wharton degree they'd paid for and dreams they'd ridiculed. Defense technology? My father Antonio had laughed, sitting behind his mahogany desk at his luxury car dealership headquarters. You're a girl with a business degree, work for a bank, marry someone from a good family. This tech nonsense will embarrass us. I won't fail, I'd said. They all say that. His dismissal had been absolute, final. You will. I'd walked out and never asked for his approval again. 8 years of ramen and coffee. 8 years of 20-hour days in a garage that smelled like motor oil from the auto shop next door. 8 years of my mother's concerned phone calls. We worry about you, dear. That really meant we're embarrassed by you. 8 years of Vincent's smirks at holiday dinners before I stopped attending. Still playing with computers? When are you getting a real job? They had no idea I'd stopped needing their validation by year 3, by year 4, when we won our first government contract, by year 7, when we hit $12 million in revenue with innovative cybersecurity protocols that could detect military communication intrusions in milliseconds. The $189 million Department of Defense contract had come through 6 weeks ago, multi-year, 3 military branches. The Wall Street Journal had run a feature. I'd used my married name, G. Santos, for all public appearances. The few relatives who'd seen the coverage hadn't connected the dots. I'd preferred it that way. Until this moment, holding evidence that they'd finally noticed my success and decided to destroy it. My hands stopped shaking. I pulled up my contacts, dialed my lawyer. Patricia Acuno, she answered on the first ring. They filed a fraudulent bankruptcy petition against Apex. Silence. Then she asked, Who's they? My brother Vincent claims I owe him $2 million from an investment that never happened. The court date is in 3 weeks. Send me everything, now. I photographed every page, emailed them while still on the phone. I could hear her keyboard clicking as she pulled up the files. Gabriella. Her voice had gone cold. Professional cold, the tone that meant someone had made a catastrophic legal error. This is incredibly stupid fraud. Any forensic examination will expose it in hours. But But in the meantime, it creates complications that could delay our DoD contract implementation. Exactly, that's the point, isn't it? They don't know the scale of what you've built. They just know you have something big and decided to sabotage it. My mother's cousin works at one of our compliance law firms. She must have seen something, mentioned it at a family gathering. Why would they want to destroy your success? I looked at the framed photo on my desk. Me at 26, exhausted and triumphant, standing in front of our first office with 3 employees. Because my success proves they were wrong about me. Some people can't tolerate that. The next 3 weeks were surgical precision. Patricia assembled 3 boxes of documentation while I continued running my company, taking Pentagon calls, reassuring investors who'd heard whispers about legal complications. I didn't tell my team the details, just that we had a nuisance filing to handle. Every night I reviewed our evidence, 8 years of legitimate financial records, tax returns, audit reports, the DoD contract, redacted for security but clearly authentic, letters from investors, and then the forensic analysis Patricia commissioned. Vincent's loan agreements had been created 6 days ago. Digital metadata exposed everything. The signatures were clumsy forgeries. The financial figures were fantasy. My brother had committed federal fraud because he couldn't stand that his sister had built something he couldn't destroy with mockery. The morning of the court date, I dressed in the understated charcoal suit I'd worn for the Pentagon contract signing. Expensive, but not flashy. Commanding without being ostentatious. I arrived at the Alexandria courthouse 45 minutes early. Patricia met me at the entrance with her boxes of evidence. "You ready?" she asked. "I've been ready for 8 years." Vincent arrived with our parents like they were attending a performance. He wore a tailored suit I recognized from his dealership promotional photos. Mom had dressed in somber black like she was mourning. Dad carried himself with righteous anger, the patriarch whose family honor had been offended. They walked past me without acknowledgement, not a glance, not a nod. I was the problem to be solved, not a family member to be greeted. "Finally facing consequences," Vincent said to his lawyer, loud enough for me to hear. "Should have happened years ago." I watched him settle into his seat, arranging papers with performative confidence. He had no idea what was about to happen. Neither did our parents, sitting in the gallery like supportive family, nodding along as Vincent's lawyer began organizing his fraudulent documents. The gallery was nearly empty. A few court regulars, a journalist covering bankruptcy proceedings, some people waiting for later cases. None of them knew they were about to witness a spectacular implosion. Judge Margaret Holloway entered precisely on time. I'd researched her extensively. 30 years on the bench, reputation for thoroughness, 0 tolerance for judicial misconduct. If anyone would see through Vincent's fraud immediately, it was her. "We're finally shutting down your embarrassing little business," Vincent announced as the proceedings began, straightening his tie with the smug satisfaction of someone who believed he'd already won. His lawyer stood. "Your Honor, the petitioner seeks court intervention to protect creditors from a failing business entity. The defendant has systematically avoided repayment of a substantial family loan, choosing instead to fund an unprofitable venture that has never demonstrated financial viability." I remained silent, letting him perform. Patricia sat beside me, calm and ready. Our 3 boxes of evidence waited on our table. Judge Holloway held up her hand. "The company name, Apex Defense Systems, based in Alexandria, Virginia?" "Yes, Your Honor." She pulled up something on her computer, typed briefly, then went completely still, her pen suspended over the documents. Her eyes widened. "Counsel, approach the bench, immediately." Both lawyers moved forward. The whispered conference was harsh, tense. I couldn't hear everything, but Judge Holloway's voice occasionally cut through. "Same Apex Defense Systems that just secured the $189 million Department of Defense contract? The one featured in the Wall Street Journal last week?" Vincent's confident smile began to crack. His lawyer's face had gone pale. My father leaned forward in the gallery, trying to hear. His expression shifted from smug to concerned. Judge Holloway looked up, her eyes meeting mine with an expression of disbelief mixed with growing anger. I'm going to need to see extensive documentation before we proceed, because either this petition is the most incompetent filing I've seen in 30 years on the bench, or someone is attempting to commit fraud in my courtroom. The gavel came down. We're in recess for 30 minutes. During that time, I want both parties to prepare comprehensive documentation of their positions. She fixed Vincent's lawyer with a stare that could freeze nitrogen. I strongly suggest you verify every document you've submitted, because if I discover fraudulent filings in my courtroom, the consequences will be severe. Vincent practically ran to his lawyer's side. What's happening? What did she say? I used the recess methodically. Patricia spread our evidence across the table. Actual financial statements showing $12 million in annual revenue and healthy cash reserves. The DoD contract documentation, letters from investors, tax returns, audit reports, 8 years of legitimate business records, and then the forensic analysis. Document experts had examined Vincent's loan agreements and found they'd been created 6 days ago. Digital metadata exposed the fraud immediately. The signatures were clumsy forgeries. The financial figures were fantasy. Behind me, I heard my mother's anxious whisper, "Antonio, what's happening?" My father didn't answer. He was staring at the evidence Patricia was organizing, finally beginning to understand. 30 minutes later, Judge Holloway returned. She didn't sit. She stood at the bench, holding a printed document. "I've done some preliminary research during the recess," she announced. Apex Defense Systems is not a failing company. It appears to be a highly successful defense contractor that just secured one of the largest cybersecurity contracts in the current fiscal year. She looked directly at Vincent's lawyer. "Would you like to explain why you filed a bankruptcy petition against a company with no apparent financial distress?" The lawyer shuffled papers nervously. "Your Honor, my client provided documentation of a debt. Documentation that even on cursory examination appears inconsistent with the company's public filings and press coverage." Judge Holloway turned to me. "Mrs. Santos, or should I say, Ms. Moretti, since the petitioner seems to be your brother, would you like to respond to these allegations?" I stood. My voice was steady, clear. "Your Honor, there is no debt. There was no investment. Every document submitted by the petitioner is fraudulent. My brother has never been involved with Apex Defense Systems in any capacity. He's filing this petition to sabotage my company because my success embarrasses him. That's a serious accusation. I have serious evidence." Patricia began distributing copies. "These are our actual financial records, prepared by certified accountants and verified by annual audits. This is the forensic analysis of the documents submitted by the petitioner, showing they were created less than a week ago using templates inconsistent with standard business agreements. And this is a timeline of my brother's public statements about my company over the past 8 years, demonstrating a consistent pattern of dismissal and hostility." Vincent shot to his feet. "This is ridiculous. She's my sister. I have every right to collect debt she owes." I turned to face him directly for the first time. "What debt? Name the date of the supposed loan. Name the bank account from which funds were transferred. Provide a single piece of evidence that doesn't evaporate under scrutiny." He couldn't, because there was no evidence. There was only greed and spite, dressed up in legal filings. Judge Holloway examined the documentation for 20 minutes. The courtroom was silent. Vincent's lawyer looked like he wanted to disappear. My parents had stopped their theatrical performance, replaced by dawning realization that this wasn't going according to plan. Finally, the judge spoke. "I've reviewed the materials presented by both parties. The forensic analysis is compelling. The metadata clearly shows the petitioner's documentation was created recently, not years ago as claimed. The financial records submitted by the defendant show a company with substantial assets and no outstanding debt to the petitioner." She turned to Vincent. "Mr. Moretti, I'm dismissing this petition, but that's not the end of your involvement with this court. Filing a fraudulent bankruptcy petition is a federal crime. I'm referring this matter to the U.S. Attorney's Office for investigation of potential perjury and fraud." Vincent's face went white. "Your Honor, there's been a misunderstanding." There's no misunderstanding. You submitted forged documents to this court. You claimed debts that don't exist. You attempted to force a successful company into bankruptcy proceedings through fraud. She removed her glasses. Did you know that interfering with a Department of Defense contractor can trigger additional federal charges? The government takes a very dim view of people who jeopardize national security assets. National security? Vincent's voice cracked. It's just my sister's little tech company. Your sister's little tech company provides critical cybersecurity infrastructure to the United States military. Sabotaging it isn't just fraud, it's potentially an issue of national security. Judge Holloway turned to me. Ms. Santos, I apologize for the court's time being wasted by this frivolous filing. Your company's reputation should not be affected by this proceeding, and I'll ensure the record reflects the fraudulent nature of the petition. Thank you, Your Honor. Case dismissed. The aftermath was chaos. Court officers approached Vincent and his lawyer regarding the criminal referral. My parents tried to slip out quietly, but I caught my father's eye as he reached the door. His expression was unreadable. Shame, maybe, or anger, or just the inability to process how thoroughly his assumptions had failed. Mr. and Mrs. Moretti. I kept my voice even. I assume you knew about this. Dad turned slowly. Gabriella, this was Vincent's idea. You were in the gallery nodding along while he tried to destroy my company. Don't pretend you weren't part of it. We thought we were helping. Mom's voice wavered. Helping whom? Your son commit federal crimes, or yourselves feel better about betting against me for 8 years? Mom stepped forward. We didn't know it would go this far. We thought, Vincent said the company was actually struggling. Vincent said what he wanted to believe, and you believed him because that's easier than admitting you were wrong about me. I gathered my files. Patricia stood beside me, ready to leave. The $189 million contract? That's real. The 47 employees who depend on Apex? They're real. The technology we've developed that protects American soldiers? That's real too. You tried to destroy all of it because my success made you uncomfortable. Gabriella, my father started. I'm done. Whatever happens to Vincent legally is his own problem. Whatever you tell yourselves to sleep at night is yours. But don't contact me again. Don't pretend you're my family. Family doesn't try to bankrupt each other with forged documents. I walked out of the courthouse and didn't look back. In the weeks following the dismissal, the full weight of Vincent's actions became clear. The federal investigation moved quickly. Vincent's lawyer, facing his own potential disbarment, cooperated fully. He revealed that Vincent had approached him with the scheme, claiming Apex was a failing company that needed to be shut down before it could embarrass the family further. The lawyer had been negligent, trusting his client's assertions without verification. But the primary fraud was Vincent's. Charges were filed within 6 weeks: bankruptcy fraud, perjury, attempted interference with a government contractor. Vincent faced up to 15 years in federal prison. My father used his connections and substantial money to secure a plea deal that reduced the sentence to 3 years. Vincent would serve time in a minimum security facility, lose his position at the family dealership, and carry a felony conviction for the rest of his life. The dealership chain survived, but Dad had to step back from daily operations. The reputational damage of having a son convicted of federal fraud made him toxic to the high-end clients they depended on. Last I heard, younger managers were running the actual business, while he consulted from the periphery. Vincent completed his 3-year sentence at a minimum security facility last year. He now works in sales at a small car dealership in North Carolina, far from the family business and the reputation he destroyed. We have never spoken since the trial, and I have no plans to change that. Mom sent a letter 6 months after the trial. It was full of justifications and non-apologies. We never meant for things to go this far. Families should forgive each other. Surely you can understand our perspective. I didn't respond. Some questions don't need answers. Apex Defense Systems celebrated its 10th anniversary last month. We've grown to 156 employees. Our contracts with the Department of Defense have expanded to $340 million over the next 5 years. We've opened a second facility in Colorado and are planning a third in Texas. The Wall Street Journal ran a follow-up piece, "The Defense Startup That Survived a Family Sabotage Attempt." I gave one interview about the bankruptcy case, carefully worded, focusing on legal lessons rather than family drama. The journalist asked why I thought my brother had done it. "Some people can't tolerate being wrong," I said. "They'd rather destroy something successful than admit they misjudged it." Do you have any relationship with your family now? I have an excellent relationship with the family I've built. My employees, my partners, my husband Marcus, the people who believed in me when I had nothing but a garage and an idea. Marcus, who I met during Apex's 3rd year and married 2 years later, stood by me through every challenge, including the bankruptcy fraud. He's a software architect who believed in my vision from our first conversation. And your biological family? They made their choice. I made mine. Last week, I received a letter from my younger sister, Carla. She'd always been peripheral to the family drama, too focused on her own social climbing to pay attention to mine. But apparently the scandal had affected her standing in her precious country club circles. People whispered about her brother the felon, her parents the enablers. "I know you probably don't want to hear from any of us," she wrote, "but I wanted you to know that I never agreed with how they treated you. I was too cowardly to say anything, but I always thought you'd prove them wrong." It was a half apology weighted with self-interest. She wanted to distance herself from the family catastrophe, to position herself as the sister who'd secretly supported me all along. I wrote back a single sentence. "Support given in silence when it would have mattered is just complicity, but thank you for the letter." I meant it. I didn't forgive her, but I acknowledged the gesture. Growth has to start somewhere. My daughter was born 3 months ago. Her name is Elena, after my grandmother, the only Moretti who ever believed in me, who died before Apex became what it is, but who told me on her deathbed that she knew I'd succeed. The timing felt right. 2 years after the trial concluded, with Apex stable and thriving, Marcus and I were ready to start our family. I hold Elena in the nursery I built in my home, a home I purchased with money I earned, in a neighborhood I chose, far from the family that tried to destroy me. I tell her stories about resilience and determination, about building things that matter, about the difference between people who lift you up and people who try to tear you down. Your other grandmother and grandfather, my parents, won't be part of your life, I told her last night, even though she's too young to understand. That's not punishment, it's protection. You deserve to be surrounded by people who see your potential, not people who need you to fail. She blinked at me with those newborn eyes that don't quite focus yet. You're going to do amazing things, Elena, and when you do, I'm going to be your biggest champion. That's what family means, not shared blood, shared belief. I put her in her crib and watched her sleep. This tiny person who would never know the family that rejected her mother. She'd know the family that chose her mother instead. That's enough. That's more than enough. They forced me into bankruptcy court expecting to finally prove I was the failure they'd always claimed. Instead, they proved themselves frauds, literally and figuratively. The judge recognized my company's name because we'd built something worth recognizing, worth protecting, worth celebrating. They thought they were shutting down an embarrassment. They were trying to destroy a $189 million success story. The courtroom wasn't their victory lap. It was their exposure. And now, while Vincent serves his sentence and my parents fade into irrelevance, Apex Defense Systems keeps growing, keeps building, keeps proving that the only thing more powerful than family doubt is personal determination. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles, zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one.